equity, and inclusion, especially in the field of investment and in many other fields as well. You're going to be hearing this morning from some real champions here, from New York City Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, from Reverend Al Sharpton of the National Action Network, from Grace Reyes, President and CEO of the Investment Diversity Exchange, Robert Greene, President and CEO of the National Association of Investment Companies, and Daniel Bruges of Reverence Capital. We're also joined by some of the 1,200 people who are in this building today who are themselves asset managers from MWBE firms and emerging managers who manage pension funds for the teachers and firefighters and school crossing guards and cops and secretaries and social workers who do the work of this city and run it every single day. And I'll introduce some of them a little later on in the press conference so you can know who they are. But I do just want to say to all of you, we are very grateful for your partnership. Whew. In recent days, the President of the United States has been gaslighting Americans, and I do not use that word lightly, gaslighting Americans about DEI, about diversity, equity, and inclusion. He and others around him have claimed with no evidence whatsoever that DEI was somehow responsible for the failure of Silicon Valley Bank, that it was responsible for problems with the pullout of the military from Afghanistan, and most recently and most absurdly, of course, for the recent tragic plane crash in Washington, D.C. I will say, apparently, the post he was supposed to put out blaming DEI for the Chiefs' Super Bowl loss was a fabrication. So I'm just saying. Unfortunately, the impacts have gone far beyond absurd statements and mean tweets. His executive orders are forcing federal agencies to roll back civil rights and anti-discrimination protections that have been in place since the Lyndon Johnson administration. And sadly, many investors and corporate actors have rolled back their own programs for diversity, equity, and inclusion, even without any legal reason to do so already. They are obeying in advance, as scholars of authoritarianism have observed. So BlackRock and Vanguard, ISS, Walmart, Amazon, they have caved in advance. Now, these are companies who know that diversity in their investment portfolios, on their boards, in their senior leadership, amongst their customers, amongst their employees. These are companies who know that diversity improves financial performance. They've put out the data. They've said it in their annual statements. They've shown it in the results that they have brought forward, that diversity is integral to fostering innovation and creativity, that it is consistent with fiduciary duty, that diversity drives results. And they are pulling back, not because they have some new evidence to the contrary, they are pulling back out of fear and cowardice. But we are not here today simply to criticize. We're here today to show our resolve. We will not bow down to forces of hate or baseless attacks. In fact, we are pushing forward. And that's what this week represents. For the first time, the New York City pension funds that my office oversees have joined with other pension funds across the country, 12 funds across 6 states, to make it easier for existing and prospective emerging and MWBE managers to gather together to meet the staff of those funds, to help us identify talent so that we can further diversify our portfolio and help them identify opportunities to grow their funds by managing them well. We've done it in the past on our own. Last year, I think we had 500 managers over at the UFT. This year, today, in this building, we have 1,200 people meeting our funds. And this week, we're together with New York State Common Retirement, New York State Teachers Retirement System, and funds from Maryland, Illinois, Connecticut, and Minnesota, all doing this work together. And let's be clear why we're doing this. You know, we're doing this because we have a fiduciary duty to manage the retirement security of all those people who keep our city running well. And I was thinking about the language for this, Rev, because when you're an investor, one of the things you're responsible for doing is managing for risk. So we got a lot of smart folks up here. What's the term you use for how you look at your portfolio to manage risk? Diversification. Now, that sounds a lot like diversity, but somehow in investment speak, it's a whole other term. It's diversification when it's across asset classes, when it's across geography, when it's across business size, when it's across growth strategy. That's diversification. And yet somehow when it comes to, and there's no, that's not a bogeyman, that hasn't become a bad word. And yet when it's who manages your money, somehow it's a whole different story. The Knight Foundation a few years ago put out a report looking at US assets under management broadly, and they found that only 1.4% of assets under management by pension and investments and universities and endowments was managed by people of color or women. That means 98.6% of those US assets under management were managed by firms owned by white men. Now, Rev, 98.6 is a great temperature for your body, but it is not diversification, I will tell you that. So I was thinking maybe we could even think about changing the language here. Maybe it'd be different if instead of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we said diversification, equity participation, and portfolio rebalancing. We could call it DEP. But look, today we're going to keep resolutely calling it DEI, and I just want to talk for a minute about results, because that is what we're here today to further. When I arrived at the Comptroller's office, the data had not been kept on our diverse MWBE and emerging managers. It wasn't all in one place. It had never been put forward publicly. And James Baldwin said, not everything which is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And Mike Bloomberg says, in God we trust, everyone else bring data. And if James Baldwin and Mike Bloomberg are telling you the same thing, you should probably go do it. So we started putting out an annual report, and I do want to give a big shout out to our Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Emerging Manager Strategy, Taffy Iodeli, who's on this stage, who did the work to get us to produce this report. When we put it out 2 years ago, we were at 11.6%, better than that 1.4% that the Knight Foundation found more broadly, but still a long way to go. We laid out strategies. We started meeting more managers. We grew the network of people, and I'm pleased to tell you that over the past 2 years since we started this work, we have grown assets under management with Black, Latino, Asian, and women managers by 37.5%. We've grown it by $6 billion, from $17 billion to $23 billion. And with the strategies that we've committed to and that are being implemented today, we're going to grow past 15% on to 20%. It'll be $35 billion of assets under management by MWBE managers. And here's the kicker. That diversity produces results. The folks in the room today are amongst our best performing managers, and here's the proof. Last year, our MWBE managers outperformed their benchmarks by over 500 basis points, by over 5%. And that contributed to strong performance overall. We beat our benchmarks last year, 10% returns over the 7% benchmark, and that meant even as we were guaranteeing the retirement security of all those city workers, we saved taxpayers $1.8 billion that can be invested instead in our schools and our parks and in safety in our neighborhood. That is what diversity, equity, and inclusion gets you when you manage well. That's what the people on this stage are delivering for our retirees and the people of New York City. And that is why, at this moment in time, we are not cowering to whatever they say in Washington. We're not walking backward. We're not hiding under a rock. We are pushing forward with diversity, equity, and inclusion by finding diverse managers, by finding the best talent wherever it is, so that we can be consistent with our fiduciary duty, so we can earn top-tier returns for New York City's retirees, and so that we can support a broadly flourishing economy that works for all New Yorkers. And no matter what happens in Washington, that's what we're going to do right here in New York City. You're going to hear from a few of the folks who help us lead and organize this work, and then I'll introduce you to some of the other asset managers, and then we'll be very pleased to take your questions. At this truly insane moment in time in our country, there's a lot of voices that you would like to block out. One of the voices that we are lucky to have in New York City with clear clarion call to what justice demands, but also what sanity demands, is the founder and CEO of the National Action Network, and it brings me great pleasure to introduce the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Thank you to our controller. Let me say that I'm here, and National Action Network has been working very closely with the controller around the issue of diversity. So this is not an issue that he is raising because of the climate. We've been dealing with this over the last several years together. The person that runs that in National Action Network, Carol Wallace, is with us, and we also have worked hand in glove with Robert Greene, who's on the stage. It is important for people to understand the reason we need DEI and the reason we needed it is because there was a lack of focus and fairness with diversity. One of the reasons that I think that people want to act like this is something that is created unfairly, it was created to stop what was being done unfairly. Blacks, Latinos, women, LGBTQ, disabled were locked out. So don't act as though when we break the lock to open the door for everyone, that we are giving someone a handout. The handouts were those that did not have to compete with those in other communities that have proven they could deliver more if they could be given a chance. Brad Lander had the courage, backed up by Taffy, I might have to give her credit, to stand up and take the risk, and the risk was rewarded by those of these communities I've named were able to deliver more. And if those that had the positions or the accounts earlier could beat them, then they should prove that. But this argument of we should only go by merit, merit is when you can deliver, and they have delivered. Can you imagine a man with 34 felony convictions and a sexual harassment conviction talking about merit? He couldn't fill out a resume at any one of these firms that's standing here. So merit has nothing to do with this. Delivery for the people of the city of New York is what this is all about, and these people have delivered. What we are stopping is people that get the big firms and invest them with people that are against our community, and Jumaane Williams and I have worked on this. I've talked to labor unions whose pension fund groups let big developers borrow money from them, go and use that money to gentrify our communities, and our grandmothers are funding the removal of themselves from their own homes. This has got to stop, and it stops with how Lander and them did it by diversifying a diverse community. New York is diverse. Its asset managers ought to be diverse. If they cannot deliver, then they should not be re-signed. But give us the opportunity to do what we were always barred from doing, and this controller has done it. That's why I wanted to be here with him this morning. Thank you.
Our public advocate is here not only because he's a believer in this work, but because he is a trustee of the New York City Employee Retirement System. Those funds are constructed so that half the board members, half the trustees are from the unions, whose members are the beneficiaries of the funds, and half the trustees represent the city of New York, and together we balance to make sure we achieve long-term retirement security and prudence for the city. And what we're showing today is that you do that best by diversifying your asset managers in addition to your portfolio. And one of the strong voices for doing that that New Yorkers can count on is New York City Public Advocate Jumaane Williams.
Thank you so much. Peace and blessing, love and light to everyone here. Thank you to the comptroller, to Reverend Sharpton, to everyone who was here and bringing us together. And in particular, just thank you in a moment where we may not be getting some of the leadership we need in the city to push back on these. I just thank you for helping step in the gap to make sure that we do have it. I do want to shout out Elizabeth Guzman, who's here as my appointee to the pension board, and making sure that I'm stayed abreast of everything that's going on and pushing for yeah, you can clap for her. Making sure I'm kept abreast of all the things that are going on, continue to push for diversification. We're at a moment in time where people have continued successfully pushed people's emotions and biases and fears past irrational thought. And so you have a place in this country where people were screaming and hollering about Obamacare, how bad Obamacare is, while they wanted to keep the American Care Act that gave them the health insurance that they had, not understanding that it was the exact same thing. And I say that because people have now thinking about DEI as if it's some kind of unfair practice that puts people in places that don't deserve to be there, when nothing could be further from the truth, even as we see what's happening in the federal government, where we're actually putting people in places that they have nothing to do with. That's a different conversation. But I want to implore folks about what DEI actually is. All it says is that we should take measures to make sure that people who are qualified and can do the job are in the spaces and applicant pools to be chosen for the job and the positions that they qualify. That's all it says. It doesn't say you have to hire any one particular person. It says that there's a diverse pool of folks who never get the opportunity because they're not in rooms like this. They don't know how to apply for things. They don't know how to be in the place to get the position. All it says, let's create an opportunity for that to occur. And you have to ask yourself, if you really believe only 2%, only 2% of black, brown, and women have the capability to manage these things. That is absurd. If you believe that, that's another conversation. But my guess is most people don't believe that. And so we have to understand and figure out why is it that 98% of the people managing the funds are white men when that is not what the population looks like. We have already adjudicated in the courts and in hearts and minds of most people that diversity of thought, diversity of strategy, diversity of people is actually helpful for a society as a whole, particularly as one that is diverse as ours. We know that already. Why would we try to peel back that layer? And I want to make sure we're talking about the attacks on diversity and the attacks on immigration and others as one thing, because for me it is about the erasure of people. And we cannot allow that to happen, particularly when, one, we already know that it is right and helpful, and it's actually profitable. We're not even telling people don't make profit. And what we have seen is even in investments across the globe in places like Africa to help them actually grow while we're being profitable, why would you not want to do good for people? That's the question we have to ask. And so I hope when the media discusses what is going on, you explain to people who are angry, who are fearful, that this is not forcing the hire of anyone. It allows people access to be in a pool so someone can look at their actual credentials that have been missed for a very long time. And know that diversity is not the reason you do not have health care. Diversity is not the reason that eggs are higher than they are now than they were in November. There are people who are richer now than they were before the pandemic that may have more reason to do with that, and I'm sure of it. So don't allow people to take your angers and your fears and direct them at something that actually makes us all better. That's why I'm here. That's why Elizabeth Guzman is here, and I'm so thankful to our comptroller for bringing us all together. Thank you.
We're going to hear from a few of the leaders of the associations that help organize this work, and then I'll introduce a few of the specific managers at the end. Thank you very much, Public Advocate. We couldn't put this conference together without a broad set of partners that help us attract the 1,200 people we're talking to today to meet new folks to work together with and get that value and creativity. And I'm going to introduce you to three of them. The first is Grace Reyes, the president and CEO of the Investment Diversity Exchange. Grace, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you to the New York City Comptroller's Office for having me today. It's an honor to be here, and it's completely surreal to be in a room filled with legends like Reverend Sharpton. And just a minor programming note, can I go before those guys next time, because it's definitely hard to follow. I'll do my best. As CEO and founder of the Investment Diversity Exchange, which many of you know as TIDE, our mission is to amplify the underrepresented voices. And I'm incredibly proud of the work my team and I have accomplished in connecting talent and capital access across the investment industry globally. We built TIDE on three important initiatives: diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, you can't spell TIDE without DE&I. And it pains me to hear lately that people are questioning the three things that we stand for. The other day, I heard someone say, "I'm so against DEI." All over the news, there's so much rhetoric against DEI. What's interesting is that it's primarily acute to the US. In developed countries all over the world, the mission is still largely inclusive. And so I'm grateful we're together today to fight the persistent attacks on DEI. And it made me wonder, are people really against diversity? Are they against equity? Or is it inclusion? Because the opposite of all those three things is called discrimination. Ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't about giving unfair advantage. It's about eliminating the barriers that have long kept qualified talent from opportunities. I firmly believe the timing is now to triple down on inclusion. Widening the aperture for talent strengthens teams, increases performance, and drives progress. DEI, when done right, benefits everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. Grace mentioned some of the legends of this work, and we really are joined by quite a few of them. And one of the legends in this work is Robert Greene, who leads the National Association of Investment Companies. He was already the MC this morning on our panel to kick off this conference, which I did not make an easy job. Sorry about that, Bob. But we're so grateful for NAIC and for your leadership. Please welcome Robert Greene.
I'd like to thank Controller Lander for convening this opportunity. I'd like to thank Reverend Sharpton for always being there when injustice is being done. I represent the National Association of Investment Companies. And if there's any group that has stood on diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's NAIC. The organization was founded in 1971 as a derivative of a program that the Nixon administration created, a Republican administration, to create an ownership culture in communities of color. After the wake of the various protests across the country in the 60s and the brutal assassination of leaders, NAIC was created to bring forth people who had talent and people who wanted to work hard to create opportunities. Who are these people? The people I represent, some 194 managers, have come out of the same system that all investment managers have come from. They have gone to the best colleges. They have apprenticed at the best shops. They have worked and produced returns over their entire career. The difference with them, other than their skin color, their gender, their sexual orientation, or any other identifying factor, the biggest difference from them and large investment managers is that they are entrepreneurs. They have stepped out on faith and stepped out on their own capacity to create a system, to create a firm that would produce significant returns. And let's keep in mind, these are not people that are selected for any exogenous factor. They're not selected for any other reason. The three criteria they are selected on are their team, their track record, and their investment strategy. So when we talk about DEI, we have to be very, very clear. We're talking about people that have assembled extraordinarily talented teams of people. We're talking about people that have, over their entire career, produced a track record that merits the opportunity that they are given. And we're talking about people that have come up with investment strategies that have produced extraordinary returns. And what are those returns? Those returns have been published for some 25 years on NAIC's website. Those returns are accumulated by one of the big four accounting firms and benchmarked against the same benchmark, no different criteria, the same benchmark that other firms are benchmarked against. Those are the Burgess benchmarks. And diverse managers, evidenced by the study that we have done, which has been peer-reviewed by learned academics, has demonstrated 500 basis points of outperformance, the same which New York City's system has experienced. So there are two common data points in that. 500 basis points is 5% to non-finance folks. And that is an amount of money that anybody on Wall Street would walk across the street to go get or go around the globe in international funds to go get. So as we think about who we're talking about, we're thinking about people that the system does not naturally include. And all DEI has been used to do is to broaden the aperture, as you've heard today, to get more talented people in the system. When have more talented people been problematic to people in need? The U.S. pension system in this country has been grossly underfunded. Thankfully, not the New York City and New York State pension systems, which are growing rapidly. But it is a clear correlation that diverse managers have helped increase the funded status, not decrease the funded status of pension plans. So rather than fight about DEI, the next time you see a diverse manager, pat them on the back and thank them for their service. Thank you.
Right.
Well said, Bob. Thank you. I'll note that the New York City pension funds are about 85% funded for the totality of our obligations that run out decades, and on a path to be fully 100% funded by 2032, and of course, in a very strong position in every way to meet our obligations to every one of those city workers, including a teacher who starts today, and we hope will be teaching for 30 years and then live for many years after that. That's the long-term view we're taking. Before I introduce our final speaker, let me just introduce you to some of the other folks who are up here, because they are the ones who are driving those returns and earning the money that makes it possible for us to fund those pensions. So we're joined by two of our largest MWBE firms. We have Lawrence Bancroft from Bivium Capital Partners and McCullough Williams and Lisa Hines from Exponents. Please give it up for them. Along with Robert Smith at Vista, I think those are our three largest MWBE managers, each managing over $1 billion for the New York City pension funds, which are $280 billion in total. We also have with us, and I'm going to read them all and then we'll applaud at the end, Tyson Pratcher from Artemis, AJ Hernandez from New America Alliance, Mike Tomasco from MCCP Investment Partners, Betty Solonic, Accelerate Investors, Kenneth Saffold, 015 Capital Partners, Prabsharan Singh from Purin Equities, Katie Wei, Bay Street Hospitality, Guangtong Sun from Turning Rock Partners, Donna Sims Wilson, Ka Capital Management, Joe Sylvester and Ivka Kalis from Prometheus Capital, Jack Yang of Sycamore Tree Capital Partners, Abby Zhang from Kalius Capital, and Richard Young from Phoenix Merchant Partners. Please give them all a hand. If you want details on every single one of the emerging and MWBE managers who manage for the New York City pension funds, you can get our fiscal year 2024 report. It's online. We have a few copies here. If you're an investor looking for some great managers to manage for you, I recommend meeting them in person out there today and following up after as well. To close us out from Reverence Capital is Daniel Bruges.
Thank you very much. I'm Daniel Bruges. I'm a partner at Reverence Capital. We have always appreciated We have always appreciated the support and partnership with the New York City pension system. It's been invaluable to us. In addition to being a diverse-owned firm, we have always prioritized diversity in our investment team. And the reason for that is simple. We think having the full talent pool to access leads to better returns and better outcomes for all of our investors. It doesn't go beyond that, and at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to deliver for New York and for everybody else that we work for.
Thank you, Dan. We're also joined up here by Renee Griffin. Thank you very much for your leadership and partnership. I want to echo what the Rev said about Cara Wallace, who's been a great partner and is the person that helped us find Taffy Iodelli, who's been leading this work. And then there's other folks in the room from the New York City Comptroller's Office and Pension Fund System. So I do want to give big shout outs to Steve Meyer, our Chief Investment Officer, to John Adler, our Chief ESG Officer. We introduced earlier at this conference for the very first time our brand new Deputy CIO for Responsible Investing, Valerie Redhorse Mole, and our whole team of asset class heads and deputy CIOs are here as well. While there's support for this work from leadership, while Taffy keeps us on track every day, it is the asset class heads and the senior investment officers and the investment officers who are doing those meetings, doing the diligence work, meeting people, bringing on new managers, and driving those results on behalf of the employees and retirees of New York City. And I feel lucky to get to work with them every day. So please, one more time, just give it up for the set of people on this stage and the work that they are doing. We will take on-topic questions if there are on-topic questions, and then we'll let folks go if there are off-topic ones. Shaq, you gonna manage? Sure. Look, as a proud Jewish New Yorker, I'm proud to tell you that the Chief Financial Officer of New York City is a proud Jewish New Yorker and feels thrilled every day to get to come manage the resources of the city and retirees. Many of our biggest managers, look, BlackRock is our biggest single investor. It's run by Larry Fink, another Jewish New Yorker. Our biggest private manager is Blackstone. John Gray leads the work there, another proud Jewish New Yorker. So we are, look, I think the fight against anti-Semitism and all forms of hate is a critical part of what New York City has to do, of course, against anti-Black racism and Islamophobia and anti-Asian hate as well. But knowing that anti-Semitic attacks are the largest single category in recent years, it's critical to stand up and be counted. And I'm happy to, talk about how I identify in this work as a Jewish leader in investment management. And I'm proud of the investment leaders like Larry Fink, John Gray, and many others who we've got a good representation of Jewish New Yorkers managing the retirement security of the people of New York City. And we've done Jewish heritage events all around the city. What we decided to do was go do them in Queens, in the Bronx, on the Upper East Side, on the Upper West Side, in Brooklyn. We actually did something in partnership between Jewish New Yorkers and Black New Yorkers. And we're looking to do one out on Staten Island as well. So we've done some things that we've continued in the office in the traditional fashion, some things like Diwali, we just went out to Richmond Hill for, and for our Jewish heritage and relationship building work, we've done it all over the city. Thank you. Come on, this is exciting work. I know you have other questions, but there got to be a few more questions about how great these managers are. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate your being here. Reverend Sharpton, thank you. I don't know if you want to give a closing word. Yeah, why don't we have Rev Sharpton's going to close.
Let me just say again, I think that what the Comptroller has done in the city is a model for people around the country. and we should not be intimidated into in any way, shape, or form in backing off of DEI when it has proven to deliver better returns, better business. We're not asking for handout because we deliver. There are others trying to block DEI that want a handout by trying to cut off the field from blacks and browns and women and LGBTQ plus and disabled. If you are as good as you say, then you should compete and not try to hide behind that having LeBron James on your team is diversity. No, it is the best player on your team, and we have some LeBron Jameses in finance on this stage. Thank you.
Are there, Shaq, how do you?